Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Community's Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 671. My name is Eric Nilsson. With me today, I have my regular co-host, Matt Lungeth. Today is Wednesday, December 1st, 2023. Matt, how you doing today?
Eric, it's been an interesting week, right? If last week was the week of the close, this is more of, let's say, day two operations. We've seen a tremendous amount as far as internal information and whatnot, and people and process and changes and whatnot, as to be expected. And there's some of it is one of my favorite books that I like to read in all things business situations is Who Moved My Cheese? So a little bit of, which systems are we using for what and whatnot, but I'm sure that we'll work through all of that. But before we get to that, we have some esteemed colleagues with us from Com Division today to join us talking about the partner ecosystem and where this Broadcom acquisition of all of the VMware ecosystem as we know it affects the partners business and more importantly, the customers and their take on that particular situation. But before we get to those subjects, sir, my favorite questions. How are you? How are things out on the West Coast? And what is the color of the bay?
Well, I'm doing fantastic as always. I'm excited to be part of Broadcom and seeing the VMware brand continue to move forward. The products continue to move forward. It has been exciting here. Hocktan has been on campus and talk to everybody. He's very direct, very straightforward, tells it like it is. Big technologist, loves technology. You can tell that that's what he likes to do. He likes to acquire technology. He likes to select the technology. And his business model is to select great technology that he can, continue to drive forward. So I like him. I like where we're going, and we're back in the office as of next Monday. So I came back in the studio. Eve and Sasha are in the studio with me, and so it's nice to have them. We're still getting back into the groove of how do we have cameras. I don't have a camera.
This is our first hybrid podcast, right? I can't remember the last time that we were back in and with you in the office, and we have guests in the office, and with Corey and I here remote. And of course, if you want to see any of that, join us over on youtube.com/V barbecue. But proceeding along, it's great to see you back in the office, Eric. Maybe we can all be out there for a recording sometime soon.
Yeah, I hope so. And the color, it's a beautiful, December day here, December 1st. The sun is out. It's bright. It's not too cold. I think it was 50 in the morning, and you'll get up to like 68, 69, but very, very sunny. If you're out in the sun, you're going to be warm. So beautiful day. Color of the bay is just a nice green, a dark green, kind of flat, not a lot of wind today. Bay is shallow, but not a lot of mud has kicked up. So we're happily having a nice, medium December day in California. So can't go wrong with that. Looking forward to December and Christmas and the ski season. So happy about that. Before we get to Eve and Sasha, I want to go back to Corey and say, Corey, so is it still snowing in Utah? And I heard you're going to get an office assigned to you out there.
Yeah, it is. It's actually snowing right now. I'm looking at my cameras. Yeah, it snowed yesterday, last night, and we're back at it again. And I actually might be sitting in an office, in a Broadcom office very soon. The great thing about it is I haven't been in an office in a long time, and I enjoy going to the offices. I enjoy meeting new people. Even in the heavy winter, season office, it's like 4 minutes away. So unlike, California, where I commuted from 22 to, I want to say like 45, but about 3-4 hours each way to get into Silicon Valley, right? And I don't regret it, right? I love working in Silicon Valley. So, so all good stuff happening. I've got some vExpert news too, if you want to go over that now, Eric.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we've got our vExpert applications are open. I said that on the last podcast, so I'm saying it again. If you're new to vExpert, have questions about vExpert, want to know more information about the program, we've got a couple options. One, you can reach out to me directly. I spent a lot of one-on-one time with people. I enjoy doing that. Two, you can reach out to a vExpert Pro. One of the ways you can do that is you can go to vexpert.vmware.com, click on directory, click on Pro, and you can find a Pro who lives within your country, speaks your native language. You might even know this person. Another resource we have is the best practice guide, which covers the entire program and what we do, what processes look like, what content we look for, what don't we look for. And then we also have office hours that are happening on Mondays and Thursdays. You can drop in. Office hours run for an hour that you can drop in, ask questions, or if you just want to listen, you can do that as well. Again, those are Mondays and Thursdays. You can find the information for those on vexpert.vmware.com, along with the best practice guide that's there too.
Now, Corey, I don't think we can get all the way through the podcast here without addressing the elephant in the room, right? That's out there this week, and the elephant would be like, hey, is the vexpert.vmware.com website up today? Because there's a lot of moving parts happening with the Broadcom acquisition, and tools and technologies are smashing together. I'm no longer on Outlook. I'm now on Gmail, right? So I love Gmail. It's great. But like the day Broadcom took over, all of a sudden I had work to do. I had to get over on Gmail. We don't use Zoom. We use WebEx. There's a bunch of tools and technology that had to be moving. And I know yesterday we had the fun of the Slack channels. So maybe we should just have a quick update on, the tools that are coming together, and maybe we can just address that a little bit.
Yeah, so we saw, woke up, saw Slack not working anymore. So I'm still working with the teams to figure out kind of like what we can do in that space. I don't have an answer there yet. Okay. That's something that you and I need to have a discussion about. Because anything I say here would just be me completely guessing.
Yeah, but we are working on it, right? We did see the Slack channels disappear yesterday, and it caught most of us by surprise, although it shouldn't have, because I had seen a slide a month ago that said, here are all the tools that they're moving, and Slack was one of them. Slack's owned by Salesforce, and I'm not sure if I don't think Broadcom uses Salesforce at all, and so therefore I'm not sure they have any kind of agreement with them. And Slack was one of the things that they were going to stop using internally. So I saw that slide and went, oh, that's okay. We're an external free usage. We're on a free channel, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I think what they did is they were working with Slack and told Slack, just get rid of all channels. We're no longer a customer as VMware switched to Broadcom. And I think there were some collateral things that nobody expected. So we have escalated that, and we are working with them. And Corey and I will certainly, and we apologize for that bumpiness that's happening as we switch tools. But that's life in this land, and we'll get to even Sasha here to talk a little bit about what that's like for them from an external perspective. Matt, anything else we need to cover before we get to our guests?
Yes, Corey, you had sent out an email earlier in the week that for those of us that were vExpert members of the using a VMware.com domain address as our primary point of contact for our vExpert either application or ongoing membership into the program, that there was some important programming notes as far as that we needed to make a change there. Do we want to go through that just so that we could share that on air as well?
Yeah, I can touch on that. Yeah, so we know that the email addresses are limited, right? We want to make sure that we update our employer to our proper email address, right? So in order for everything to kind of work together in harmony, meaning that the vExpert Slack, the vExpert site, and the license portal, everything uses a unique identifier, which is your email address, right? So we want to make sure that we update that. Now, when you go to do that in Customer Connect, there is a delay. The systems need to populate, I'm sure, out to other servers, and everything takes a little bit of time. I think I saw maybe a 2-hour delay for my vExpert licenses to come back up. But my number one step in there was, step one, go and capture your licenses first in case there is an issue, you can't see them, they disappear, whatever that is. Go capture those first, and then go make those changes. And all of those systems will stay together. You won't be removed. Won't be removed from anywhere. You'll still see your licenses, and everything will work in harmony like it always has.
Important programming notes there for the vExpert community.
Yeah, and that was sent out on mail, like Matt mentioned. If you don't have the mail, reach out to me. I can forward it to you.
All right, so maybe we should just get to our guests and do what we normally do, which is we give you a minute or two. We're a community podcast. So Yves, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a career arc, minute or two of who you are and what you do in the VMware ecosystem. And how do you say your last name?
Okay, so my name is Yves Sanford. I'm a CEO and founder of the Division Group. We are a professional services and architecture company located both in EMEA as well as here in the US. For my own personal career, I started actually with VMware Workstation 1.0. So I'm a very, very early adopter, then started to using it in our data centers, and then focused more on the consulting architecture path. And then a few years back, I even did my VCBX around the cloud management space. So I'm VCBX number 203 and running around proud with that still since then. I think I'm the only executive in the VMware space who actually has a VCBX on top of it. And for us at the moment, it's crazy times. It's like I haven't been, Eric mentioned it already when we met outside. It's like over the last, I think, couple of months, I have been to the office here, I think, every 2 or 3 weeks. So busy times, but interesting times, and really looking forward to what's going to happen next.
Great. It is interesting to be back in the office and see you every time I've been to the office. You're here. And yesterday we had a podcast on Wednesday, but it got canceled. And we reached out, and you were in town. I'm like, hey, let's get in the studio, and then we're kicking off back on campus. So I think it's fun to have you here. Sasha, how do you say your last name? And give us the same kind of pitch. Where have you been?
My name is Satya Shrestha. I'm CRO of Division and an architect at Division. Working with VMware since 2000. So a lot of years with the different products, vSphere, NSX, and more.
Oh, we lost Palo Alto.
I think we may have. Folks, if you're live and still somehow streaming on this, I'm by myself right now. Eric has lost connectivity out of the Palo Alto office, and Corey has been taken offline as well. So we'll just stay here live with the feed until they're able to rejoin. There we go.
All right. We're going to ask you to repeat that because we dropped off for a second. Tell us your career arc again, and how you got here, and do a better job this time. No, we just had a technical glitch. The whole thing dropped everybody, and now everybody's back in. So do it again.
Okay. Yeah. Again, my name is Sascha Shrestha, CIO and architect at Division. Working with VMware since around about 2000, so many years with the different products, starting with vSphere, doing a lot of stuff with NSX, and in the last years a lot with NSX, with Cloud Director, and with a tons of stuff. And the last weeks and months, traveling a lot around the world, talking to our customers about all of this transition to Broadcom, what happens with Broadcom, what happens with the products, with the licenses. So the customers have so many questions and don't know what is the future, what does it mean for the customers themselves, for the daily business, but also from the license perspective. We need to inform the customers a lot about VCF, what is VCF, especially the customers currently not using VCF, and what does it mean for the future, for the new designs, the new architecture. So review the current architecture and take a look in the future, bring in new architectures, how to use VCF, especially on the service providers.
Okay, good. One of the things that, and I'll just start this off, and we can talk about what this experience transitioning to Broadcom, has been for you. But I'll say one thing that Hawk had mentioned when I was, I think, at the VMUG user group in Barcelona. He was like, we really want to see deeper penetration on vSAN and NSX and the whole cloud foundation, as a whole package versus just running vSphere. And so does that ring true to you? Do you guys get that message and do you have to take that back out to customers? I think enterprises probably are already going down that journey, but what's your thoughts on that?
I think the difference, when we look at how VMware was run in the past and what we will see moving forward, and I started a complete video series just a few days ago where every day I'm going to put a bit of content out on what my personal opinions are about what's currently changing and what's going to come. I think in the past, VCF and a lot of these, let's say, combined solutions were more, it's like, this is one way for you as a customer to do. And as an IT, especially, let's say, the older ones under us, it's like we always try to actually turn every nuts and bolts on it and actually try to customize everything. And so a lot of companies were using all the VMware tools, but not with under the VCF umbrella. And I think that is one of the things which we are going to see change now, as with the new approach, VCF is going to be center and foremost, and Hock made that clear in one of the sessions I was in Barcelona very, very clearly, where he says it's like VCF is going to be the leading product. So I think what we are also going to see in the next couple of months and years is a much stronger focus to integrate the products better together. One of the biggest complaints from every customer was always, is like, we like the idea of VCF, but really the integration of the individual bits and pieces was not necessarily always as perfect as it could have been. And I think that is a good news for the customers now, is we will now finally see a much stronger enforcement that all of these products have to work together, that the integration gets much better. And with that, it actually becomes a much more valid scenario for the customers. And the other thing is, when you look at it, there is clearly customers who say, it's like, yeah, but we only just want to stay on the vSphere track or on the M6 track or anything else. And I think it's too early to really fully understand what the consequences are going to be for these customers. At least I haven't seen a clear consequence for that. It's the only thing which I have heard so far is everything moving forward and growing is going to be VCF. And I think that is a good thing for everybody, and we will make progress with that. And I think when you look at it, and I had the discussion just in the last few days, I was at reInvent in Las Vegas, and we had several discussions even over there where people said, it's like, yeah, but Broadcom has a bad track record with products and everything else. Where I said, it's like, so can you prove this to me? And I think that is currently, there is a lot of talk out there. But as soon as you start questioning people, it's like, what do you mean with it? And what's really behind this? And a lot of it is just based out of Here Talk, where people say, it's like, yeah, but everybody was saying that. It's like, yeah, but on the other side, the numbers kind of prove Broadcom right. It's like, if the changes they do are so dramatically that it's unattractive for customers, then anyone should please explain to me why Broadcom software has growing revenue. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, because then customers, even if initially they stay, they would walk away afterwards. And so they must be doing something right there. And it might not be perfect for everybody, but I think overall it's a good point for VMware to now finally get there and get this integration done.
Yeah, I think that it was interesting. Hawk had come in on the campus on Monday and done he calls them a coffee meeting, I think, or something. And he says, yeah, but we stopped doing donuts and coffee because he realized that everybody would come and eat the donuts and the coffee. They weren't really coming to listen to me. So now we just have the coffee talks without the coffee and the donuts. Right? It's like, all right, I like this guy, right? And he's like, yeah. So somebody asked him, like, so what about innovation? Like, how do you guys manage innovation and risk taking? And he basically said, look, I don't want to take any risks, right? We have great products here. The number one thing I hear back from customers is, please finish them, right? So I don't want any new products. I don't want new innovation, right? Like we've cut back on the innovation, spaces right now. And what I want to put money into is just finishing what you already have on your plate, right? And so that was actually interesting, right? And to some degree, if you're on the outskirts pushing the edge, you might feel that Broadcom isn't doing right for you because you were interested in blockchain, or you were interested in one of the things that they're not going to do, right? But if you look at the core products, I think that's where he's kind of like, look, we've got great products. Let's just make them way, way, way better. So interesting.
And I think that's when people say, it's like, as soon as Broadcom comes in, there is no innovation anymore. At one point, you need to, as you said, you need to finish up the products first, because before you can start something new. And when I look at, especially not only in the enterprise space, but also in the smaller space, a lot of the smaller customers potentially never integrated all the products because of the complexity. Getting all of these pieces working together, I mean, for us as an architecture company is a fantastic job because there is a hell lot of work for us to be done.
Yeah, right.
But it was complex to integrate. And I think that's going to be a lot easier. And then people can really get the value out of the products. And let's face it, it's like, if I would now have to sit down and then really come up with a new feature for vSphere, I mean, we have vMotion, we have fault tolerance, we have all the things. And there is really, and I mean, looking at some of the other players in the market, they are celebrating themselves that they are finally able to actually move working workloads from one system to another. It goes like, what's the big deal? This is something VMware has been doing for the last 10 plus years. And I think it's also now a good point to actually reset a bit and actually really come to the point and make sure that the integration and all of that from all the products work better. And because that's, in the end, it is a pain point for a lot of customers, not only for the enterprise ones, but really getting products integrated. When I look at also service providers, it's like how much time we have to spend to make all these combinations work. VCF and a lot of things, if the integration get better, is actually making that a lot easier.
It actually makes sense when you think about going to market and just going to market with VCF, because now that is your primary product. That's what you sell. Instead of selling vSphere, or you sell VCF, which is an integrated solution. Now all of a sudden you're focused on that, right? And it does make things start to work better, and they'll actually look at completing the features, doing the better integration. And Hawk has said just making it easier to buy, right? Just a simpler purchase.
Which is another point. It's like if you are an end customer, you potentially never see the vast majority of SKUs and everything you have within the VMware system. But especially as we have quite a few NSX experts on our team, and as we have been with customers trying to figure out which combination of NSX SKUs and products you can actually combine and how to combine them, and it's really a working. So there were separate things you had to worry. Is like, is it legally correct from a license perspective? Can you purchase that combination? Can you implement that combination? And in the end, does it bring the customer value? And all of these things are going to be a lot easier moving forward.
I think of that almost to the point where we were getting, in some ways, of Microsoft with trying to run a desktop OS within a hypervisor when we were first doing that with VDI, of all the licensing complexities and whatnot. It was getting to the point where it was, in my opinion, overly complex, not only for the customer, but then the partner, the service provider, and ultimately even the internal systems to try to figure this all out. And of course, sometimes between all of that, we'd end up with differing opinions. And then we have to figure out, ultimately what is the right one. But over on the partner level, Yves, do you feel that in some way, as we start to have this core, a true, to take the acronym out, core foundation, where the number of iterations that we could possibly see as far as configuration deployments will eventually start to come down? I'm thinking of this just even in the context of vSAN, right? Where you would have some customers that would choose to maybe roll their own enterprise storage. But what is your opinion as far as, if we have all of the components out there to begin with within the stack, as far as storage and what we can do with SPBM, are we more likely to see an adoption rate there? And if we're more likely to see an adoption rate, will this ultimately equal a perhaps simpler product to support? Or are we still going to see those stalwarts that are out there that want to roll their own storage? What's your thoughts on that?
I think when you look at the solutions for that, is hyperconverged has its use cases. In the past, it was potentially partially not adopted. Let's face it also, because
scale, right? It did not necessarily scale.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily scale is the only platform or part out of it. I had enough customer scenarios where we would also say in the end that a term a friend of mine used a couple of weeks back is like, a lot of salespeople are coin operated. And what he meant with that was very clearly is it's not necessarily that they always sell what's in the best interest for the customer, but sometimes they just sell what's actually giving them the best margin at that point in time. And that was one of the complexities VMware had. We had an overly complex partner program in many different scenarios, tons of different incentive pathways, and I know partners who had several full-time employees just to manage all the incentives and everything else. And a lot of the other vendors, some of them were easier to deal with, and that led to the scenario that it was not necessarily always a technical decision that certain products were not used, but just it was more comfortable for the partner to use the other solution, and it created a bigger margin for them. And so I think that is one change we are going to see. One talk which I had with Hawk real short during Barcelona Explore was also where he said it's like, it's much more important that partners are also trained and certified, where I think over the last couple of years, that was never enforced to the level which it should have been enforced, which many other vendors enforce it to. And I think that will be another change, and that will in the end lead to higher customer satisfaction, because when I look at my team and we from time to time have to come into customer deals or other things and actually fix wrong designs, wrong architecture, wrong implementations, and the pure fact if more people are going to be certified and really fully understand how vSAN and everything else works, is going to make this a lot better. And so overall, I think the adoption goes up. Plus, we now have, with vSAN Max and other features, we have the ability to scale storage out and provide these. Will there be use cases for other storage options? Yes. Will there be use cases for other networking options beside NSX? Yes, but that's the truth for many other vendors out there as well. I think the change we are going to see is customers are going to demand utilizing the complete VMware stack in the future, because they are going to pay for it anyway. So, and that's similar to the argument is like, and that's my personal opinion. My personal opinion, I would clearly say Zoom is the more advantageous solution over Teams. In the end, in most companies, because everybody says, but we pay already for Teams. In many cases, people, from that perspective, have to use Teams. And I think it's not necessarily always a bad thing when you use integrated tools. We use Teams internally in our company massively, because it actually allows us, now that the integrations from Microsoft have become much better, to directly integrate with our Dynamics. It directly allows us to integrate with so many other things. And I think that's what we will see moving forward, now that the business units can really focus on VCF as the center solution, whereas in the past you had everybody was first building a standalone product and then trying to figure out how to make it work with the other ones.
All right.
Yeah,
leading with integration first.
And Matt, I just want to chime in here. Like when you look at the business units themselves, and what Broadcom is doing is they're consolidating business units. So instead of storage and networking and that, there's one business unit. It's called it's I don't know what they even call it, cloud, I think, but it's basically VCF, right? Yeah. Like then you have you have Edge, right, which makes sense. You've got security, which makes sense, and you have Tanzu, modern apps, right? It's not really Tanzu, it's modern apps and everything you would need, but the app layer, right? And that's way more, as an org, that's much more simple, and even marketing is more simple now, right? Like Broadcom goes like, well, they do less marketing. I was like, well, actually, they simplify products, they simplify delivery, and therefore marketing doesn't have to be as complicated. You don't have to have vSAN marketers. We had whole teams that were just focused on that. So I think that's also, it all comes back to Broadcom knows how to go to market. Right, like he says, they specialize in knowing how to take technology to market, sometimes better than the original companies that developed the technology. So it is interesting. Sasha, you've been sitting patiently. You're architecting. What do customers reach out to you now, and are they concerned when Broadcom's taking over? Do they want to know what's going to change, or have you gotten a lot of questions around working directly with the people that you work with?
Yeah, we had a lot of questions from the enterprises, but also from the service providers with what is VCF. So we have many customers don't using VCF right now. And what does it mean for the migrations? So we have many customers, also service providers, currently working on the V2T migration. Still, yeah. And Yeah, the biggest question there is currently all the service providers don't start at this migration. Should they start now, or should they migrate first to a VCF, and then with this migration to VCF, do the NSXT migration? Because otherwise, maybe they have to migrate it 2 times.
Right.
And that's a big discussion currently, and we need to figure out what are the next steps, and if we need to go 2 steps or maybe go the direct way to VCF with NSXT. So that's a big point on the service provider side, but also from the smaller business, medium business in the field. They have many questions. Do I really need to use and buy VCF now? I only need a few products out of it. And yeah, we need to figure out and take a look what is the way also for the mid-sized business. Yeah, that will be the next discussions. And I think in the next weeks and months, we will have many, many meetings with the customers to talk about.
You're obviously here in California, right? So you are meeting with the VCF, people. I don't know who you're really meeting with, but I assume so. Do they give you some visibility on what to advise customers when moving to VCF? Do they give you any visibility into what they think we should be doing?
Yeah, so the doing is very clear what's to do and how to migrate it. The biggest question is what does it mean about the licensing? When do I need to migrate to VCF? Do I need to migrate fast? Or can I say, hey, with the next hardware replace, we move to VCF? That are the biggest questions from the customer side currently. And yeah,
I think pricing and packaging is currently what most people are waiting on for. How is that going to look like moving forward? And I think we are going to see a lot of changes relatively fast. When you just see the last few days, and you experienced it here, Corey figured out that he now has an office.
Right.
I think that is something which hit a lot of people by surprise, that it was basically deal close and immediately Broadcom went into action. It's like, and I have seen immediately the pictures already where people were complaining. It's like, oh, it didn't even took them 48 hours to actually replace the signs outside of the buildings. And it's like, but what we need to keep in mind, it's a company which has experience in mergers and acquisitions, and they had 18 months to prepare. Originally, they wanted to be done already for a while. So everything is planned through. So that is, I think, for customers and partners, it's a very good news, because these changes are inevitable and are going to come. And I think the good part out of it is a lot of it is going to move very, very fast now. Okay, we have Christmas in between. That's going to become a bit interesting parts of it. But I think we are just going to see a very fast moving scenario in the next coming days and months. And once that is done, I think we have a better understanding. Because like currently pricing and packaging is the only, let's say, big unknown. Everything else is Hawk made it, as you said. It's like in his way, very, very clear. It's like it's VCF first, it's VCF only, and then we have Tanzu or modern apps on the other side. We have our edge and networking and security pieces, and this is how we are going to move forward.
I'm amazed at how accurate and crystal clear he has been. From the day they made the announcement that he was purchasing it, and he got into an all hands, and he said, okay, how this is going to work is we're going to have a date of close, and everybody will get a letter that says whether you're going to have a job, you're going to have an extension, or you're not going to have a job anymore, right? And we were all taken aback by the bluntness of how he could come in on day one. Now, it took a year and a half because of regulations, but he has implemented to his word, right? When he says, I'm going to invest more in the products, right? I'm going to, put more dollars in. I'm going to make it easier. Like the things he said, now I just see like he's like clicking through it, right? Doing it.
And I think that's something new everybody needs to understand, is the way how this runs, or the way how this whole process works, at least from what I have seen so far. It's a new way. It's not like someone puts out an idea and then it's up for discussion. It's in many cases, if Hawk has a clear path on how he wants to pursue it, it's like that's going to be the path. And I think that's for some people also a bit of the new scenario to get used to that new scenario, that it's not like a 12 months discussion whether we really are going to go down that path.
Or all the things you got to consider. That no, they basically they've made their decision. They're going to go and they'll fix what's broken along the way. You can tell that they'll have escalation processes.
And that's the other part. Is like I met over the last couple of days also during reInvent and before, and over Zoom several people within the people who came over from VMware into the new VMware by Broadcom, and a few changes which some people immediately said is like, and it was interesting to hear that from employees firsthand, where they said it's like, yeah, and I immediately got his email address where he said it's like, yeah, and if anything is wrong with your accounts or anything else, it's like, ping me. I'm going to make sure that this works. So that is also, I think, a new change. It's more like I have been around the Bay Area for over 20 years. It's like, it reminds me of how for a long period, especially in the early years, companies were run. It's like, if you needed something and you think you needed the CEO for it, you were directly going for it. And even though we have been talking all around the Bay Area, it's like that this is the behavior. A lot of it was hierarchies over hierarchies and stuff like that. And I think that is potentially also now changed with all the org structures being reassembled. It's like everybody can find a new path and a new position in this new model. And as Hawk, at least to a certain team member, said, it's like, if there's anything wrong, reach out to me and I'm going to be there to fix it. So that's also what I learned from people I met at Broadcom Software in the last couple of months, is where they said it's like, we know that the way he approaches sometimes can be not necessarily ideal, but he has absolutely no problem in fixing it immediately and getting back on track. And I think that's the other thing which we will see is like, yes, things might not be perfect on day one, but they will be changed as they go.
Yeah, and he definitely said that in the all hands. He was like, I don't know how I'm allowed to share in the all hands, but I think it's pretty open knowledge. He was like, I run a flat org, right? All of you shouldn't be more than 3 levels away from me. And, your boss's boss, and then me, right? Like, or, pretty close to that. So if you have something that, that's not right, or that you need to fix, or you need to tell me, just tell me, because we're a flat org and I'm just 3 levels away from you. Not a big deal, right? And we'll get to it if we can get, we can solve things. So very, very direct, very quick, very, very move forward kind of person. And then, go fix what you started to work on, right? Like my takeaway was that. So it is kind of interesting. Matt, I've been talking for a bit.
It's one of the points that you had brought up earlier was the current partner ecosystem and some of the differences that might be coming along. And not to go into too far of where the existing partner relationship is, but we've certainly heard from Hawk that partners will be a key element of the overall go-to-market strategy of Broadcom Software moving forward. And you had just mentioned as far as the partner certification process, whereas currently right now there's different partner tiers and partner certifications into the fact of, let's say that, hey, you have so many members that might have a VCP or a cap, and then proceeding forth and certifications on those competencies. How do you see that changing, and especially given where now a partner might need to, whereas they were, let's say that there is realms that they can still specialize in, but if the customer is now going to be entitled to the entire stack, so to say, how that might change areas of practice, and your thoughts just on how the partner ecosystem is going to be changing, how ComDivision might be approaching those changes, and areas of opportunity for partners that might be out there.
So let me put out kind of the disclaimer first. So I certainly can't change anything, share anything which I potentially have heard about any changes in the partner program, but I can share what I also did on my own videos and other things. Is the one big change is we are going to only have the 3 or 4 business units moving forward. So that also means there is no need in really having partners being certified as it's currently in all the 8. I mean, we were the first partner globally holding all 8 master service competencies. When you look at it on a per head average, I think we are one of the highest certified partners globally out there. But in the end, I think the important change moving forward is potentially the baseline certification partners need to have is going to be more complex. So they need to be able to really do the full VCF stack. And that means they need to have the certifications for the complete stack. So if you are currently a partner who potentially only does vSphere and maybe a bit vSAN, then I would clearly say it's like you definitely need to get your head around things like networking with NSX and things, pieces like that. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging. But overall, I think it's a good thing moving forward, because the only way on how we can really deliver the best services to the customers is if we have partners out there who are fully certified and who really understand the full stack. So that is a requirement. Will every partner which is currently on the spectrum will be able to go with that? Potentially not. But let's face it, on the other side, there is also a huge opportunity for it, because one thing I learned about Hock over the last 18 months is when I actually looked into all of this is he is really valuing loyal partners. He is valuing people who are willing to invest and actually go forward with him. And so I think there is a huge opportunity, even if you are not yet one of the key partners, to still actually become one or be one in the future. It's not that it's now a line is drawn in the sand and said, it's like, okay, the top 50 partners globally are going to actually survive and everything else is gone. I think there is still room for a lot of opportunity. But I think we will also see in that area, and I look just at the Broadcom partner model, at the global Broadcom partner model, whether it was software and hardware all together, of the last couple of weeks, it's far more simple than the VMware one. It doesn't have that many tiers. It doesn't have that many side tracks in all kinds of different ways. But it still covers the necessity which we have for more reselling focused partners, more services oriented partners, more hosting partners like cloud service providers. And so I think the program is there, and moving forward, as I said, it's like I'm expecting partners need to get their act together. So those partners who have been, let's call it, a bit lazy in the past on actually recertifying their people and keeping them up to date, they will be surprised what they need to do in the future. For customers on the other side, I must say, this is all good, because there is a reason why you have vendor certifications. And I'm not necessarily saying that someone who is not certified can't do the implementation, but it's much harder to judge for an end customer whether a partner is really skilled up for it or not. And I think that's going to be one of the improvements moving forward, where you just actually can easily prove that you can do that. Sure,
there's a baseline out there, right, amongst partners, and allows the customer to see, what diligence those individuals have done at that within that partner organization. You gentlemen had also mentioned that you're just coming back from reInvent, right? And the hyperscalers, as they have been with all of these changes, are still just as prevalent as they were before the acquisition. What was the general sentiment out there within reInvent, and what are some of the rumblings that you're hearing out on the AWS front as far as integrations, and what was the general sentiment of the Broadcom acquisition within the framework of that particular event?
Yeah, from my perspective, one important part I get from the reInvent was the new tool from AWS, where you can back up vSphere VMs and recover directly on EC2. That's a big point of view currently for me, where hey, that's maybe the next step on another direction, where they say, hey, you can now migrate to EC2 directly. We have a tool for you. Though from the VMware perspective, that's not so good, but yeah, we have tools now. That is one point. And the other point is, yeah, they talked a lot about the stuff around VMC on AWS, launched new servers there. Need to take a look what are the next steps with VCF, with VMware. Not VCF, VMC on AWS, sorry. And yeah, but the most important part from my perspective was this with the backup and recovery. That was really interesting, especially on that time with the migration of VMware to Broadcom.
But besides that, overall, even I mean, speaking to the executive people from on the AWS side, it's like it feels like no one is really worried about it. It was more it currently, I would say, is like everywhere where we run around. It's more like a relief phase where people say it's like it's finally over. So now let's get back to work and move forward. And whatever the changes are, we are going to work with it. On other areas where we leave the VMC part out, is like there was huge support also from the AWS team around Tanzu and modern applications, what VMware does there. And it seems like they see this as a huge opportunity for joint works as well. So that whole area is clearly a focus area moving forward. So I think as much as I mean, the hyperscalers have different challenges at the moment. We are coming to the point when you look at hyperscalers in general, where companies come into the, let's say, the more mature cloud adoption actually comes to the point where every CIO is revisiting, was cloud really the best solution? And that is where you currently see a lot of discussions going on over the last couple of weeks and months, is already outside of the Broadcom discussion, where people said it's like, there is certain workload which certainly should be on a public cloud or on a hyperscaler. But a lot of companies also figured out it's like, hey, our own data center was not necessarily that bad. And that could be a good game for the whole VCF story, because now that they need to rebuild their infrastructure, they can directly rebuild it on VCF and get the workloads up and running on there. So I think we will still see a lot of movements. And I mean, doing VMware now for nearly 20 plus years, it's like, how often in my career people told me, it's like, why are you still doing VMware? It's like, this is going to be dead in the next few years. It was like, first everybody said it's like virtualization is never going to take off. Then we had the stories, it's like, hey, containers are going to kill it. It's like, you don't need virtualization anymore because we now have containers. It's like, VMware is going to be gone soon. Now we figured out that containers alone are not working, so we need Kubernetes. Everybody comes, it's like, yeah, but when Kubernetes works, it's like, and then I just actually come back to reality, and I just look at some of the large-scale projects we run with very large enterprises, and all of a sudden you see a Windows 2000 and NT4 box, and you say it's like, you can do whatever you want with your modern apps. As long as we can't get rid of these old workloads, it's going to stay. And it's the same for cloud. There is some workload which is perfectly well in the cloud, but not every enterprise application is going to be rewritten. Not every service is going to be redone. And I think we see a mixture out of all of that. And that is something what the hyperscalers currently are more worried about, because they kind of a bit fall out of the hype cycle at the moment. And people are really revisiting it, looking at the costs, getting invoices which they don't understand. And again, that's coming back to Hock's point, is like, simplify things. It's like, I had enough customers in the past who were sitting there and said, it's like, yeah, we are just going to buy a new ELA. We really don't have an understanding about all these hundreds of line items on here. But if you say this is what we are using, then we must believe it. That's going to be a lot easier moving forward, where we only have, let's say, yeah, in the end, it will be more than a handful of SKUs, but it will not be in the six-digit area anymore.
Yeah, I think that Hawk had, and in the all hands again, I'm just going to use what he said, because, man, what that guy said is gold, right? He was like, look, the cloud, Matt, like, he's talking about the cloud is a piece, right? And if you have good VCF, right, it should be connected to cloud. It should be totally integrated, so that if you want to move a workload there or move it back, you should be able to do that. It's just a feature of VCF, right?
Sure. To Eve's earlier point, when we see some of these large enterprise organizations that were early cloud adapters and went cloud native, right, for what were their core VM workloads, and I'll say that some services that were transferred to their hyperscaler of choice, but then also moving the traditional Windows OS applications with them. And now they're 12, 18, 24 months into the journey, and they start to see some of those bills. And then look at that, and then not only took what their monthly reoccurring costs are with that hyperscaler, but then the cost of change, right? They might have that other offer that's out there from an AWS, a GCP, and Oracle. But now we have to take what is now been that native workload and move it to another hyperscaler, and that costs with it. Whereas if we have this concept of workload mobility for certain applications, or being able to tie, best of breed solutions together, I think that's the real advantage, right? Where when you have that particular Windows VM that can stay as a Windows VM, but then contract renewal comes up and you're on the same platform. Hey, do you have VCF and AWS? Do you have the VCF solution over in Azure? Yeah, sure. And with some simple changes where we can just migrate those workloads over, as it comes up where there's cost advantages, that where it becomes, I think, the true workload mobility, and to be able to see those cost savings at scale and to take advantage of that. I think that's where we're going to see the next step of these iterations, and where the idea of, as we have talked about it before, of Cloud Smart really comes into play. Of it's not just moving to, right, cloud, as we've said before, it's an operating model. It's not a geographic location. So thinking about where those workloads are best suited, whether it's on-prem or at a certain hyperscaler or a combination thereof, that's where a smart enterprise organization is going to be able to function and do so quickly.
I know we've been live streaming now for 50 minutes, so we generally try to keep it to an hour. And so what I'd like to do is transition a little bit to, we got 5 minutes here to talk about where you think things will be exciting as we go. I know we talk about Broadcom, we talk about that's the current message today. But when you look at IT and you look at IT practices, you got AI, ML, and everybody's talking about, oh, we've got more activity going on at VMware than we have since 2012 because workloads, AI, ML is kind of coming there. And I don't want to pick on AI, ML. That's just an example, right? Other people think it's just totally hyped up. Where do you see us going in 2024? Any kind of thoughts around what's exciting that maybe keeps you up thinking about it at night?
I think AI, ML is one part out of it. I'm not really so much about what it can do. I think the first change, which is, and that's one part out of it, this is the first time that in IT, finally IT people figure out that they are going to be replaced by their own technology. In the past, this was always fun because you could basically replace
other people,
or make other people redundant all of a sudden. I mean, if you need a script, you can basically now ask the computer to build the script and you can describe it. And I think it's moving forward, and this is going to be interesting. Will this change the world in next year? No. The other thing which we also need to keep in mind is, and that is actually what's going to be more interesting, is when you talk to larger corporations, is IT is going to become very interesting in the next few years because a lot of the, let's say, initial IT founders in these companies are going to leave these companies. So we have a massive job replacement ahead of us. The original, especially when you look at medium-sized enterprises, and it will be really interesting to watch what's going to happen there, is the people who currently are head of IT or something like that, if they don't have a CIO title, is if they leave, that is basically the person who did the first network in the company, who basically decided what ERP system was initially coming. Now they have different teams. And now comes a new buyer persona, which is completely different, which is taking decisions differently and everything else. So that is going to be really interesting on how this is going to rechange IT in the next years. And take that into combination with AI, ML, we have a lot of fun ahead of us.
That's a great one. I hadn't heard that one yet, but there's this guy, the YouTube influencer called Paul, I don't remember his name, but he's got a beard. He walks around Colorado and he does these videos where he talks about demographics, right? He's a demographic specialist on YouTube. People have heard of him. I just don't remember his name at the moment. Maybe I'll put it in the chat later. But he was talking about the demographics of the baby boomers and then the Gen Xers that are coming up. And the Gen Xers are like 40 years old now, right? And just the labor pool and that transition that's going to happen because labor is changing. People are changing. The age of the people are changing. It is fascinating to think about how that's going to come. So then AI, ML, and other technology come into that. It'll be interesting. Sasha, I'll ask you the same question. Anything that excites you and keeps you up at night where you're excited about what's going to be happening?
I see it in the same direction. So the buyers will change. They are more open for new technologies, to bring in new technologies. They are not directly focused on on-prem. They are not directly focused on hardware, whatever. They don't care about the hardware. So we can ship servers fully installed. The main focus is that the servers are run, that we have a secure infrastructure. We can monitor the infrastructure. We can leave running modern applications. So from my perspective, what we saw in the last months, but also for the next year, is a big point in the view of Kubernetes. How does applications will change? How does the complete workload will change? Going to the Kubernetes style, to the declarative way of implementations. So script your complete implementation in one script or only a few scripts. Have a really easy way to roll out applications on other sites and combine these applications around the world in different data centers. Make it secure, make it available. And that's a big point from my perspective for the next year.
Yeah, neat. I'm excited. I think the compute industry is still growing fast enough that it'll outpace whatever automation we have put in place to get rid of jobs. I have a feeling there's more services. It's growing faster. Yeah.
At least there is one constant: we can't stop learning, because there will always be something new.
Okay, so the guy's name is Peter Zeihan. Zeihan, I don't know if you guys have ever watched that guy, but if you haven't on YouTube, Peter Zeihan, he's kind of right and half times wrong. So you got to take everything on YouTube with a grain of salt. But he talks about, Europe and the demographics. It's really interesting. So fun times. We are live streaming on vBarbecue. So youtube.com/vbarbecue, VBARBECUE. If you want to see what Sasha and Eve look like, go check it out and say hello to him next time you see him at a conference. Tell him you saw him on the community podcast. We always do the barbecue report at the end of the show. So what we talk about is just like, it's lunchtime here in California, so we're always a little bit hungry. And it's California, so we barbecue. You guys are from the Netherlands. Do you guys ever get any barbecue done over there? Sausage or anything else out there? What's the barbecue, out of your country?
So Germany doesn't have any. I mean, sausages are clearly one of the favorites in Germany, but by now I think we have the same barbecue cult over there. We have our huge grills and everything over there. Sadly enough, lately I haven't been there often enough, but you can get.
I should ask you, what kind of airplane food do you get?
So that's more the worrying thing. But I'm really looking forward to a good steak and everything again this week and next week. Most likely we had good in Vegas. Not sure what we are going to do tonight, but I know a few good steak places around here. So
awesome. Anything from you?
Yeah, I like barbecue. So I have many. I have normally when I stay at home, I have very often barbecue, and I like it.
Awesome. Corey Romero, I know we had Thanksgiving and you were going to deep fry a turkey. Did you light your place on fire? You're still in your house, so I guess not. How did it turn out?
I was going to smoke a turkey, but we didn't end up doing that. We had 2 turkeys set aside. We didn't take them out in time to defrost, so we had to run to the grocery store and only bought 1 turkey, but we just cooked it in the average traditional.
You were eating turkey deli meat on Thanksgiving because everything was frozen.
Right. I literally have one on my back deck because we don't have room in the freezer, so it's on the back deck frozen.
All right. Well, I expect you to smoke that baby up, and we'll hear how it turns out next time. Matt, I don't know if you want to wrap us up here with any final questions, and we're at the top of the hour in a minute and a half.
Eve, you had mentioned that you are starting a video series, or have already started a video series on some of your thoughts on this. On what platform, where will this be shared? And do you have a URL, or how would our listeners find this series if they would want to hear your opinion and your takes as we work through this transition?
Yeah, so it actually is a playlist in the ComDivision YouTube channel. If you just go to youtube.com/ComDivision, then you find the ComDivision channel. Within that, it's a playlist, but I'm going to make sure that I'm posting over the URL to Eric so that you can put that somewhere in the show notes as well. And we are keeping that posted at least for the next couple of weeks and months. depending on how long it takes. But we try to really every day or every second day to have at least a 1 or 2 minute video out there with the newest thoughts and ideas and everything around it, at least for what we can share.
Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing that series.
All right. Well, with that, it is lunchtime in California. Gentlemen, thanks for coming up here and being in the podcast studio. We'll try to do it some more often with some guests. It's exciting every Wednesday, but we missed Wednesday. Today's Friday, but looking forward to being back with everybody next Wednesday again. Until then, go get some barbecue, eat some food, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.